Yes, good morning to everybody. I hope you can hear me well. Um, First of all, I'm very grateful for the invitation to your event and also for this introduction of my person. I have really nothing to add, perhaps that I'm coming from Poland and been member in the European Economic and Social Committee for almost 15 years now. Nevertheless, we should come, I think, to our topic immediately. And forgive me, please, that I will partly read a text because this is about the translation. So I sent the text to the translation before, and for that reason, would it be like that? So the union shall promote solidarity between generations. This regulation, this is Article 3, Section 3 of the Treaty on European Union. This is a regulation, but this is also a challenge for all young and old people, non-governmental organizations, trade unions and employers. This challenge is becoming more and more important because demographic changes in our society are nowadays paired with multiple crises in climate, democracy, and security. This is why we need to establish a fair dialogue between generations in the European Union, but also a supportive legal and organizational framework for a new political approach of intergenerational solidarity in the European Union. This is also why the European Economic and Social Committee, we are an advisory body in the framework of the European institutions, and at the same time a bridge between organized civil society and the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council. That is why the committee has decided to deliver an own initiative opinion on this topic. The ESC, an assembly of 329 members from all member states, divided between three groups, employers, trade unions, and civil society organizations, is issuing plus minus 200 opinions a year. A great majority of them are being requested by EU institutions, mostly by the Commission, being mandatory according to the treaties. Nevertheless, our committee is also entitled to issue own initiative opinions aiming on new legislative and non-legislative initiatives of the European Union. On 18 September 2024, it was last week, the committee adopted such an opinion on promoting European intergenerational solidarity towards an EU horizontal approach, of which I've served as a rapporteur. So now, speaking about intergenerational solidarity, we probably should, as we did in our opinion, focus on the areas of life. At the same time, there are policy fields being most important from the point of view of intergenerational fairness, dialogue, and solidarity. Those areas are, first, the world of work. Empirical studies show that multi-generational teams are more productive than single-generation teams. In such teams, there is a creative confrontation between the knowledge, skills, and experience of different generations. In addition, having multiple generations in one workplace is an effective way to combat both age stereotypes and discrimination. Avoiding direct or hidden discrimination against young people, for example, they can't do it yet, and old people, for example, they can't do it anymore. This strengthens participation in the workplace. Therefore, the participation of different generations and their cooperation with each other is an important issue in the social dialogue, as well as in the exchange of best practices and namely within associations of employers. This should lead to voluntary established standards within regions or industrial sectors, and moreover, social campaigns aimed at employment of elderly people might be an effective tool to improve intergenerational solidarity at work. The foundation for intergenerational solidarity at work is, however, the avoidance of any form of age discrimination, a result of discriminatory wage and social protection policies. The second area is the silver economy. The silver economy is defined as the segment of the economy meeting the needs of older people. In 2015, it was estimated to generate an annual financial turnover of 4.2 trillion euros and more than 78 million jobs in the European Union. The development of the silver economy also creates opportunities for intergenerational solidarity to develop, including through the involvement of multi-generational teams in designing and testing goods and services. An increasing share of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services is aimed at using the purchasing potential of other people to satisfy their consumption, living, and health needs. This second demographic dividend can support the economic development of the member states of the European Union. Therefore, we believe that there is a need for a long-term EU strategy on development of silver economy. The third area, we have 10 at all of them. The third area is about pension systems, because the most pension systems in the member states operate on a pay-as-you-go basis. Due to increased life expectancy, pensions are paid out for longer. In order to stabilize pension systems, the retirement age has been increased, or this is being considered in many member states. However, the costs of pension systems is growing anyway. In addition, in some cases, young people are employed on contracts that result in reduced access to social protection and lower contributions to the social protection. At the same time, this leads to lower revenues from pension contributions and a larger deficit in pension systems. Since not only life expectancy, but also healthy life expectancy is increasing, it is worth considering, bearing in mind different circumstances and specific systems in the member states, it's worth to considering whether those additional healthy years could be spent not only in retirement, but also in longer working lives when an individual wants to work for longer. Nonetheless, any such increases should be introduced in a long-term perspective, stepwise and without undermining the trust in the social protection systems. Linking the retirement age to changes in life expectancy could support longer and more productive employment, at the same time helping to stabilize pension systems and thus contributing to intergenerational justice. Ensuring that people can live in dignity on the financial basis of pensions remains both a public, political, and a societal obligation. The full implementation of Principle 15 of the European Pillar of Social Rights, that this is the right to pensions commensurate to their contributions that ensure an adequate income to live in dignity in old age. So this Principle 15 should be also an important element of the European semester. Fourth, it's about health and care services. As in the case of pensions, most health services are financed by contributions from economically active people. Young people use the services much less than the older generations. Even though in some member states healthcare is partially tax financed, Economically active people contribute more through taxation, although they in turn will receive more when they are older. Moreover, economically active people are facing an increasing burden of informal care for older people, especially family members, which limit the possibility to retain jobs. This is especially true for women, who in general take on this responsibility more often than men, while the availability of professional long-term care services varies significantly across the member states. At the other end of the spectrum, young families often struggle to find affordable and accessible childcare, which also impacts their labor market and employment perspectives, particularly for women. Despite the fact that healthcare expenditure is one of the most important drivers of rising public spending, it should be noted that in some member states, the affordability and accessibility of health services for older people are absolutely inadequate. In this context, a preventive approach to health should also be promoted for healthier lives. Nevertheless, as a part of intergenerational solidarity, social and long-term care services should be accessible, affordable, integrated and community-based, as well as co-created by citizens and their organizations, which would reduce the care burden for the working age generation and assist those who choose to care for their loved ones. Furthermore, it should be noted that the EU is seeing more and more civilization diseases like dementia and mental illness, which require a long-term and sometimes very costly treatment. This process is also linked to unhealthy working conditions, unhealthy diets, and individual lifestyles, both for younger and older generations, as well as the undesired loneliness. The ESC therefore reiterates its support for the European Commission's recommendations on combating undesired loneliness, aimed at ensuring that mental health services are easy to use across the generations, and calls for a EU mental health strategy to address mental health concerns across generations. So number 5 is the local development. Infrastructure and service of general interest should meet the needs of all generations. This requires representatives of all generations to be involved in the political and social life of municipalities, cities, districts, and regions, so that the democratic institutions in a given area can ensure a productive exchange of ideas between older and younger residents. In fact, all generations should contribute to cohesive local development and decision-making to shape age-friendly communities, supporting all generations. In particular, young people should be encouraged to engage in local activities, for example, through funding and recognition of local youth councils, and remain active when growing older, having families, and later reaching their retirement phase. So the 6th area is housing. While home ownership is becoming an unfulfilled dream for many young people and families, changing family structures and the rising share of single people, as well as the lack of affordability, are also affecting the structure of housing. Housing should be made affordable, including multi-generational housing. The latter is on the rise in many EU member states because generations living together not only provide an opportunity to exchange services such as care for children or older people, grocery shopping, minor repairs, or using the internet, but also increases the sense of security. Even if the case of individual people of different generations living separately multi-generational meeting places in the form of non-residential buildings or retirement clusters within housing estates and residential areas could play a similar role. Number 7 is the mobility. The impact of mobility adapted to needs of all generations on quality of life, participation, and autonomy is underestimated. Public transport systems are equally important to ensure the participation of children and young people, including in education, especially in remote rural areas, and the participation and autonomy of older people. However, the needs of particular generations are not sufficiently taken into account in the planning of transport and mobility systems. Also, in the context of the climate policy, free public transport, as already practiced in some EU areas, for example, Luxembourg for everyone, Tallinn in Eastland for residents, Hungary, all citizens of the European Union and Swiss and Norwegian citizens older than 65. So such a free public transport seems to be a solution worth considering also in context of a climate policy, not just of mobility of generations. So number 8 is a climate policy. Vis-à-vis global climate change, the interests of all generations are the same, practically aligned. The climate crisis affects everyone. Older people given the negative impact of climate change on public health, quality of life and safety, while young people and future generations will have to face the most severe consequences of the climate crisis and bear the consequences for longer. Nevertheless, the implementation of the climate policy is causing serious problems between the older and the younger, as well as between the current and the future generations. To avoid it, the climate policy should be developed in accordance with the principles of intergenerational equity. It should include measures to slow the rate of climate change, to minimize direct damage from climate change, and to transfer the resources and tools necessary to adapt to climate change. In some EU member states, the civil society contributes to such an intergenerational approach, shaping intergenerational alliances and movements, in which older people are taking responsibility for the future of their children and grandchildren, for example, by joining movements like Fridays for Future. And number 9 is the lifelong learning. Changing skills needs as a result of globalization and the green demographic and digital transitions require well-designed lifelong learning policies. This is particularly important for older workers who are at risk of job losses in sectors most affected by these transitions, but also for all generations to enhance life satisfaction and increase access to different opportunities. Cooperation with the social partners and with other civil society organizations is needed to promote lifelong learning. And finally, because about lifelong learning is perhaps not to say also that another important aspect is the transfer of knowledge and experience between generations. A well-known example is when young people are supporting older people in acquiring digital competences. But another example is older people volunteering to give lessons alongside teachers in schools about, for example, ethics, history, politics. Such interactions can also inspire critical reflection on the role and achievements of one's own generation. Finally, coming to the last point on my list of areas, which is participation and volunteering. Exchange between generations can be further stimulated by participation and volunteering activities which enrich the lives of all ages and communities. Intergenerational volunteering has become a permanent fixture of volunteering activities across the European Union and is already supported by the EU and nationally funded projects. At local level, intergenerational volunteering also includes initiatives for caring communities made up of professionals, volunteers, and family members. Intergenerational solidarity encourages the creation of different social networks, which can include people of all ages. This can help individuals feel more connected and included in their communities and combat undesired loneliness, as well as improve mental health and create a more inclusive, understanding community. Now you can perhaps think that we are at the committee that we are just doing very theoretical things or considerations like that and discussing, I would say, philosophical questions, and that is all. That is fortunately not all, because we have also then recommendations also in this opinion based on the analysis I've mentioned before. And some of our recommendations I would present to you now in a very, very short manner. The first one is that we already welcomed the European Union Youth Strategy, and we also proposed, in another opinion, a new European strategy for older persons. But now we call on the European Commission to adopt a coordinated, cross-cutting EU approach to intergenerational solidarity, which should focus on ensuring the rights of both young and older people, as well as their full participation in society and the economy, including employment, education, and culture. As a first step in that direction, we call on the European Commission to publish a so-called Green Paper or intergenerational solidarity. The Green Paper may include, within the context of the welfare state, challenges, opportunities, and solutions in the fields I've mentioned before. Then, furthermore, the committee calls also on the member states to exchange their best practices in those fields and to improvement the recommendation included in this opinion. Then we also call on the European Commission to adopt a recommendation calling on the member states to take into account the intergenerational aspects of the labor market, in particular by setting adequate and just employment standards for all generations and ensuring the participation of different generations and their cooperation in the workplace. Secure employment contracts, secure and sufficient income, and in-service training opportunities ought to be key components of the standards. We also call on the Council of the European Union because intergenerational dialogue, justice, and solidarity should be discussed and included in the conclusions of the Council. Then, and this is, I think, very important point, we request establishing intergenerational solidarity as one of the objectives under the European Social Fund. It's a very important point because without money, there is no politics, at least no from the level of the European Union, which would be really effective. And the last recommendation, because we welcome the intention to appoint a commissioner with responsibility for intergenerational fairness, and indeed, last week it happened that Mr. Glenn Mikalev from Malta was proposed as a commissioner with this portfolio, intergenerational fairness. So in this context, I'm very glad that our committee will have an excellent cooperation partner with the Commission. From our end, we will continue working on intergenerational solidarity, creating as a response to this commissioner, a forum for the exchange of the experiences for evaluating existing and developing new concepts and strategies for intergenerational solidarity, as well as in cooperation with the European Commission to monitor the implementation of the opinion's recommendations. So let me close now this speech. I think I was speaking long enough with a hope, but also a strong belief that with a little help of our friends from the European civil society, the intergenerational solidarity will become a permanent and important element of the European way of life. Saying that, I would be very happy if you will join next event of the ESC in this area, which will be a special conference organized by the group civil society organizations on 10th of October. I will send the invitation to you. The problem is, however, that I think we will not have a Spanish translation. We will have English, French, German, Polish, I think. But nevertheless, there is a web streaming, so you can be in person in Brussels if you wish, or on your laptop or computer to look on this, I think, very interesting event with very interesting examples of intergenerational solidarity, practical examples. It would be opened by a Polish minister for senior policy, which is who is in fact minister for intergenerational solidarity. As a representative of the incoming presidency of the Council of the European Union. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a very, very successful meeting today. So sorry not being in person with you, but this day is also for me very busy in Brussels here. Thank you once again.
So thank you, Krzysztof, for your presentation, and it's now time for questions. ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Baldu norbaitek galderarik? Eskuren bat, gora. There is no question, so thank you, Krzysztof, for being here with us.
Perdón, no sé si me escucháis. Soy Mariano.
Ah, sí, Mariano. Wait a minute, Krzysztof. There is maybe a question. Mariano?
Sí, buenos días. No sé si puedo hacer yo una pregunta.
Claro que sí, bienvenido. Espera un segundo, vamos a intentar a ver si compartimos la pantalla para que podáis estar los dos presentes. Mariano, aprovechando este momento técnico, va a ser el siguiente ponente de la Universidad de Granada, director de la Cátedra de los Estudios Intergeneracionales Macrosad. Ahora te tenemos en pantalla, Mariano.
Gracias, muchas gracias. Mi pregunta al señor Balón es la siguiente. ¿Cuál es el concepto de solidaridad intergeneracional que está detrás de todo ese trabajo que están haciendo? Gracias.
If I understood right, you were asking on the how to say it, on the basis of what is the basis for that, or do you aim with your question to rather to a political dimension or to the more ideological dimension? Sorry for
my question. ¿Puedo pasar en inglés un momento o es muy?
Sí, puedes decir en inglés, tenemos servicio de traducción.
Thank you. My question is very straight. What's the understanding of intergenerational solidarity behind the work that you and your committee is doing? How do you understand the concept?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much for that question. This is, first of all, of course, a practical approach, because we are observing their life in the member states of the European Union, and we see that between generations there are a lot of interactions, and those interactions are completely natural. So if we for example, let's think about families, about normal families, as it was in the past, at least with many generations under one roof. They are, of course, intergenerational relationships, which are completely natural, and we should not interfere in such areas. That is my personal opinion. But because of the changing of demography, first of all, our population is becoming older and older, and and this is a background for possibly interventions, political interventions, or at least non-legislative interventions from the European Union. So the background is so practically observation of the changing world in the EU, because of the demographic situation. The second one is, of course, scientific. So my advisor would, Professor Juan Dominczak, on this opinion from the Warsaw School of Economics, would perhaps be able to better answer your questions about the scientific background. But as far as I know, we have a lot of universities and scientists who are working on this topic. For us, for the European Economic and Social Committee, it is simply like that. We have a very energetical youth group at our committee, which is working very well with youth organizations in Europe. So my personal intention was to bring this thinking about intergenerational fairness, which is very, very much directed on young people and on problems, for example, with climate change, so that the older generations are somehow, I would say, the problem that we were producing this climate change, and the young people are suffering on that. So our intention was to look for a kind of harmonization, for saying what what can the European Union do and what the European Union should not do in this area, because it's more perhaps belonging to culture or to regions or to member states and so on and so on. So I would be very happy. We will have, I think, today the Spanish translation of this whole opinion. I will send that to the organizers, and you will find a more background in that. We have the chapter 2 is a background. So, but I didn't know that it would be an important topic, so I can, but as already said, we will send that in written today.
Beste galderarik, alguna otra pregunta? ¿Bai?
Sí, yo me gustaría conocer si el Consejo Económico y Social Europeo tiene alguna opinión o qué le parece, o si nos puede describir un poco más las funciones de ese comisario europeo de nueva creación, que además, peculiarmente, el título es Equidad Intergeneracional, Juventud, Cultura y Deporte. No sé si está un poco desequilibrado ese equilibrio, y siendo él, el propio comisario, una persona tan joven.
Okay, if I understood right the question, first of all, it is like that Madame von der Leyen has been announced that in the new commission, one of the commissioners would have a portfolio on intergenerational fairness, or fairness between generations. That is the title. Indeed, there is one commissioner nominated from Malta, Mr. Miklav, who should have a responsibility, but also for, I think, for sports and culture also. I'm not really sure on that point, but in any case, for intergenerational fairness. That is what the Commission did. And the very question is, of course, the content of the work or of such portfolio, because as you probably can imagine, the topic is a little bit controversial, but first of all, it's very it's rather soft than hard. I mean, it is not like, I don't know, industry or even jobs or such areas. That is something which is very, very much connected to the culture, to the very specific situations in the member states, in the regions, and so on and so on. So we, as the ESC, we will contact Mr. Miklav after he is, of course, appointed as a commissioner, because, as you know, there is the hearings in the European Parliament, and the candidates should have acceptance of the Parliament. After that, we will contact him, and we will offer our cooperation with our actions, because this opinion is only a starting point. We will establish a forum for exchange on this area, and I think that it would be something which would be very valuable to the new commissioner. I have to stress on it in this moment that the ESC is a fully independent institution, fully independent body. We are advisory body to the whole European Union. We are not a committee, advisory committee to the Commission. So our relationships with the Commission are based on independence of us. In this context, I think we can bring very valuable contribution, and I would say to enrich this portfolio, or even perhaps to fulfill its portfolio, but only in the case that we will, on the other hand, have a very, very strong contact and cooperation with civil society organizations. By the way, also with the public administration dealing on this area, of course. But our thing is the cooperation with social partners and with civil society organizations. So we can bring this potential and together create indeed an approach, intergenerational solidarity approach in the European Union, equally treating older people, younger people, their problems and desires, and so on and so on.
Okay, thank you again, Krzysztof. We will follow closely the next steps of the work you are doing.